So, thank you again for everybody that is joining us this afternoon. As I mentioned earlier, I'm really excited about this power up because I think there's a lot of great ideas in this from ways of just making your life a little bit more organized using RecDesk. Please remember to keep your mute on and your camera off during the presentation today for recording purposes. If you don't do so already, give us a follow on social media. We have a lot of cool things that go on there. But today, we're talking about spring cleaning. So, what exactly are we talking about? We're going to cover reminders on how to set up your online schedulers, how to copy programs, how to clear out duplicate profiles, and always that daunting task of organizing that money tab. So, our fearless cleaning commander, Jen, will be leading us through all of those today. And I am Andrew, or your spring Sherpa, or friendly neighborhood moderator here, and I will be helping her out along the way. For any questions that come up today, please go ahead and post them in the chat, and I will give them to Jen when she has a break during the presentation. For any questions that don't relate to our topics today, we have you covered too. Go ahead and reach out to our great team at the support@recdesk.com, or you can give them a call at the number there. I will also post this information into the chat as well. That way you have it there. And everything else, please also remember that we have the support center for you and the resource guide on your director pages there as well. With that being said, Jen, are you ready to take it away?
I am. Thank you, Andrew. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So we're going to go over some tasks that for some of you who are new, some of these items may not be as imperative, but they're going to be great resources for knowing what to do in the future. For those of you who have been with us for a while, some of these are just going to be reminders and some recommendations. As you know, we've grown and we've had so many features that have been released that I'd like to just go through and do a couple of those reminders again. So many of you all know, especially those of you who have been with us for a while, that Flex registration was a recent release. And in the past, many of you used to have to make a lot of programs. Sometimes they were your summer programs, they were your before after school, things like that. During this time period, while you have this little bit of gap before summer camp starts, or if you have time during summer camp season and you're getting ready to make your fall programs or your later summer programs, I just wanted to go back over some best practices and reminders. Now, a lot of you, I'm still going to recommend that you're going to your past programs because this is where we still want you to live for when you're copying from one year to the next, because outside of some price changes, you probably don't have that many things to update. But for those of you, and this is my example that I used earlier, you previously needed to make a program per date if you had a maximum per date. Now with Flex registration, that's a different story. So because of that small change, I want you all to think about that before copying your programs for your late summer, your late summer, your fall, and moving forward. If it's something that could have been better done as a Flex registration program, instead of using the bulk copy feature of selecting multiple programs to copy, just go to one that has the best information on it. That way you can click on edit and create new program exactly like this one. It is very important that you make sure that you see the screen and you see the word new before you make changes. If you by chance hit that copy button and you don't actually copy a program, one of the biggest ways to know is you still have a roster. Rosters don't copy over. So just keep that in mind. But this would allow you to go change the name. You can change program types if you'd like, change your registration date. I know my dates don't make any sense here, but we're just going with it. If you have an age minimum or an age maximum, this is where you want to make sure that you're setting that. But the enrollment maximum, remember, Flex registration programs, if you set a number here, it's going to default for when you select Flex registration for all the days. If you also feel when you're doing that copying that a custom question, and I did skip over that, I will pause, that a custom question may have been more beneficial to gather during a previous registration, please make sure you pause and add it. We did have a question in the first training of today that I am going to just do a reminder of when it comes to our demographic information. We do enroll only by the 2 genders that we add into the system, not the genders that you add in on the manage custom lists, manage custom genders area. We do restrict by the enrollment maximum. And the age minimum and maximum will also restrict, but only if you have the enforced date. So make sure the enforced date is current. If you backdate it, it's going to look for them to be 18 of the year that you post here. But we do not restrict by grades. So if any of your programs you've had issues in the past where the program was, K through kindergarten through second, and then you had a different program for third through fifth, and parents were signing up for the wrong one, try adding a question or 2 down here. Using the drop-down list, you can ask what grade and just separate them by semicolons. And if you make it a required field, then they do have to answer it. And while it's not perfect, it does help remind parents, hey, you're looking at the wrong program because your 5th grader is not in these 3 grades. So it does help add one extra step of prevention. I will add that some groups, they do add a second drop-down question if districts matter. That way they know what school system the kid is going to. And then you'll want to come in and you'll want to set that schedule. So if this is something that's going to happen from 8 to 1 every Saturday for the month of June, make sure you put that information in here and click on Save. Now, if the fees have not changed, leave your fees alone, because that way, when you set up your flex registration, you can now decide, do I want to do mins and max for something like a trade show or your food vendors or things like that? If you want to restrict it so it's not the same 8 vendors every single week, you want to be able to get a good mix in there. You can say that they can only choose 5 of the 10 days. That way you have a good mix. You can even set a minimum so that people can't just come once and never again. They have to come twice. You can even label the days if you have special events going on that time period. For something like this, I would imagine a per time slot would be effective for the cost. Progressive is much more related to those types of fee structures where the more weeks you sign up, the lower the rate. And as a reminder, if you decide, you know what, although I like flex registration and it would help our public, they need those dates to be super visible right there in the name. We've heard that before. We know that can be the case. Make sure that when you're copying them from one year to the next, you can select up to 10 right here and click your actions and copy selected. Remember, 365 will put it on the same date, but 364 will put it on the same day. This does the only time that is not true, however, is the exception of leap years. So just keep that in mind, as 2024 will be a leap year. And if you need to edit any of the dates or any of the names, you can go ahead and do so. Click on Continue and Copy Now. And then they'll stay here in draft mode. So if you still have questions about how you're going to do something, you still have forms to upload, any other details, then you know that they're here. They're not visible to the public, but all your staff will need to do is just hit Publish Now once you are ready for registration and visibility to begin. Now, does anyone have any questions when it comes to the programming piece? And remember, we can always come back here if you're not sure how to word your question right now.
Jen, as of right now, we don't have any questions, but as a reminder to everybody, if you do have questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them in that chat. And when we get to breaks like this, we'll go ahead and answer them.
Thank you.
Hey, Jen, we just actually got a question in.
Yes.
Can you remove programs that you no longer want in the draft section?
Yes. Now, unfortunately, you can't just bulk delete. I'd love that piece. But what you can do is you can go into that program, click on edit, and delete it. So you just need to edit that program and you can go ahead and delete it. The only reminder is if there is anyone in the roster, you won't be able to delete the program.
Great reminder. Thank you, Jen.
All right,
And
so we're going to head over into the memberships because some of you do have memberships that just continue to roll. So you're not actually, this part isn't a big deal for you. Others, you do have your yearly memberships. And the ones I want to do this reminder for, a lot of your pool memberships, you guys have already done it because you're used to the way those yearly memberships need to be made. But as a general reminder, for those of you who use memberships for something like before and after school care, you want to make sure that when you set up the next year's membership for the 2023-2024 school year, that their membership start date begins when registration begins. So if the registration for before and after care begins August 1st, then their membership term dates need to be August 1st. Because our system, when you restrict fees on programs based on their membership, it's going to require that membership be active, not a future membership. It needs to be active. So keep that in mind. And also as a general reminder, this is a good place to go through if you have, members in here that you've needed to clear out. If you're trying to gather any information, you can pull all of this information to Excel, export from here. You can export all of your membership check-ins. Our list of membership members is also a super useful source for those of you who have, let's call it unique registration periods, where you may want to see how many people registered during a certain time period and who those people are, not just the count, but who they are. You can look for memberships that are expired, active, future, primary only, renewal types, and you can restrict by the name of the membership or the membership was on or active dates. There's obviously some additional filters here as well, but please think about this feature if you guys are heavily membership driven. This is another added report that is super useful. I didn't see anything pop up, but I'm going to go ahead and move on to facilities and some reminders here. As we're heading into the spring and summer season, many of you are opening summer rentals for the first time. Your shelters, your parks, your fields, things like that. For those of you who are seasonal, I'm here in Connecticut. I know all about that. We are still at 50-degree rainy days. Make sure that your online reservation schedules are available. I do not actually have one on that location. Make sure that your online availability schedules have current dates. If it's a set period of time, seasonal, like here in Connecticut, May to June or May to September that rentals occur, make sure that it's only showing those dates. If you need to show current year and right now your dates are showing last year's, just click on your schedule name. You can update the dates to be current. Now, if it's a rental that can always happen, maybe it's an indoor location, something along those lines, please feel free to check that rolling schedule box off. As a reminder to those who did not do that for any of your other schedules, that's just going to tick forward one day every night, so you don't have to remember to go back in and update these schedules. And also a reminder, you can restrict by a password, memberships, and you can also restrict by, you can also add setup and teardown time. But please keep in mind that when you update fees here for the online schedule, if you also allow rentals, if you also do the rentals in-house, you want to make sure your fee schedules tab gets updated. We've had some customers where they remember to update one and not the other when they do have fee increases. So that is your reminder when you're doing this cleanup. make sure your fees in-house match what you're charging them online. And for reservation approval, this site does not have any good examples, unfortunately, of this, but I want to remind everyone, as this feature's been out long enough now to say this, there should not be a reservation that sits here that was a request in the past. All the reservation requests that sit here should be ones for moving forward. Anything in the past, you should either deny or approve. And if you're worried about customers receiving emails, or maybe you did the event, but you did the event through your own manual making of the reservation, you can still approve it just to clean that list out. You want to make that as clean as possible so you're truly looking at new and future reservations only. And there are checkboxes, so you don't have to email those members when you have that situation come up. Now I'm going to pause before I get into point of sale in case there's any questions.
Hey, Jen, no questions at this time. We can go back to our regularly scheduled programming.
All right. So point of sale is actually a pretty easy cleanup. There's two things that I always remind three pieces. Make sure your prices are accurate for this upcoming season. For those of you who haven't opened your pool, but you're going to be using the point of sale system over there, make sure those rates are accurate. If you're passing on taxes when you should, make sure those general ledger codes are right. If nothing's changed, leave it alone. But if you are using our current inventory piece to actually track your current inventory, and I don't mean in the negative way that I introduce it to some because they just like to see how many were sold. They don't need the actual managing of inventory in RecDesk. Please make sure you update that as well. That way everything is clean before you start. And then make sure that you're going over to your locations and that you're managing available items. You want to make sure that you are only showing the items that you should be selling. So if you have something that is assigned to that location that should not be, make sure that you unassign it, click that remove item, or make sure you assign anything that might be a new item that you're selling. Also, make sure you have all of your registers made. For those of you who don't see this particular piece, please speak with your customer success manager or reach out to us at support@recdesk.com. This is a setting we turn on, and it's usually a little bit of a discussion before we turn this piece on, as it is simply for the point of sale. It does not include any additional aspects done outside on the director end. But this would allow you to have multiple registers. So if you have one person working the main gate and then the other person who's working the concession stand, you can have both registers named for the same location. Now, your members tab. This is one that the longer that you are with us, the more you are going to notice that sometimes you end up with a large number of duplicate profiles. Now, some of you are lucky this hasn't occurred because we do have a setting that's disallowed it, so it only happens every once in a while. Others may not have had that setting turned on. You've been with us for a while, you weren't aware, or maybe it wasn't an issue and now it's starting to be one. Just let us know. We can turn that feature on to disallow duplicate profiles. We check it based on their email and their phone number. And it's just for creating the account initially on the community end. It's not for like adding household members. The one exception to that are those who use access control. There is a certain access control group that does require every individual have their own unique email address. So unless you fall into that category, that is the general blanket statement for all the other customers that use us. Now, if you do have a large number of duplicate member profiles, we do have an Excel file that we can send to you if you reach out to us that would allow you to be able to get that information and quickly see who your duplicate profiles are. If you're not a larger organization or you don't think you have that many, or maybe there are weird situations where you know it's the same person, but they moved addresses, so they created a new profile instead of updating their old one. If you have more of that situation, what I tend to recommend is when you have real downtime, Start with a letter of the alphabet that you're searching through. This makes sense so that if at the end of the day you finish C's, you know you can call it a day and start with the letter D the next morning. Or if you want to work backwards from the alphabet, either way works. But this way you can go through and find your duplicate profiles if there are any. And if they are duplicate profiles, the big thing to understand is the older profile is going to have a lower internal ID number. This tends to be what we refer to as the bad profile. Now, the bad profile just means it doesn't have the up-to-date information. It most likely is missing login credentials down here. So we want to take the bad profile and merge it into the good one. So we do that by clicking the green merge and finding the duplicate profile. Now, I know this is not a perfect example, but you get the idea. And if you hit merge now, that's going to bring all of the details over. The only piece that it does not move over is any household credit. So if these two people were listed in two profiles, were not duplicates listed here within the same household, and they had household credit on their account, you just want to take a note of that so that you can put that back in after the merge occurs. And down below that, we also have the move member to a different household. On the odd occasion where you guys have had a parent make a profile for themselves and then they go online again later and they make a profile that is just for their child. And you get the idea behind it. So now you have an entire household of people with their own logins, but none of them are connected and you need them to be connected. That's where the moving member to another household piece comes in. It's going to allow you to connect them. Now it looks pretty similar to the merge. The sole difference is that up here it says move instead of merge. Now before I get on to the dreaded money tab, does anyone have any questions? Andrew, if you're talking to me, you may have forgotten to unmute. But I'm going to assume there are no new questions and continue.
Apologize about that. My keyboard died. Yes, we have no new questions right now. Time to move on to that money tab.
All right. So those of you who are newer to RecDesk, I hope you have not seen this issue. This is probably the piece that happens to our older customers more than anything else. And I will joke that those of you who have used our Oak Ridge training site are well aware that that invoice list is very, very overdue and a couple $100,000 overdue when you go to look at it. Now, I want you all to look at your own list of overdue invoices and think about a couple of things. The first thing I like to point out is invoices that are over a certain period of time. Are you going to collect those funds? Because sometimes finance will just go, nope, we're just going to write it off as a loss, or, make it so that this person can't come back again. Something along those lines. If you don't believe payment is ever going to come, just click actions and mark that invoice as closed. It's going to make it so you stop seeking payment. Now, if your department also decides this person didn't pay, but maybe they still did their event or their program or whatever, and for lack of a better phrase, you want to suspend their usage of being able to use your services for a certain until they've either paid or some type of discussion has occurred. You can click on their profile and then click edit and scroll down. And you have the choice of suspending or archiving. I want to clarify, archiving is best if you work with, say, only children. I know some of you do have facilities where you only have kids that are 12 and under that come into your organization. Or those of you who are teen centers, your kids have aged out. They're no longer 16-year-olds who come in to study or do the work programs. They're now 20-year-olds and in college. And those kids aren't coming back. You can archive those profiles. You don't need to keep them actively listed. Suspending just makes it so they can't sign up for anything new, but it still lets them log in. Archiving pretty much just puts their profile to rest and doesn't let them log in anymore. But the other thing to think about while you're looking at this, and for those of you who are newer customers to RecDesk, this piece is really important. When you are going through and looking at these invoices, if you notice that there's a trend, all of your overdue invoices are reservations, and they're not actually overdue. The reality is you guys have a different due date than what automatically occurs in the system, because we automatically generate it for the day the invoice is created. If it's truly not due for the future, make sure you update that, because if for some reason this invoice payment is not due until, let's just say, November 30th of next year, it should not appear as overdue on my account. It should just look as though it's open, because it is truly an open invoice, but it is not an overdue invoice. And this is going to clean that money tab up, that invoice list up, so that you truly know how much money is just owed to you versus who's actually overdue. And you can decide when you figure out who's overdue if there's penalties or what to do next. But this is a screen that I highly encourage you to close those invoices out if you're not collecting funds or you don't believe the funds will ever come in, just because it is much cleaner. And if by chance a member does say, hey, here's $25 I was supposed to pay you in like 2016, we'll make that joke. If you go to their profile and click on account balance, you can change the status to closed invoices. Make sure you change the date period too, especially if it's that far back. And you'll be able to see their closed invoices. So you can go ahead, go into the invoice, mark it as open, and now take that payment that they had been overdue on. Do we have any questions?
Yes, Jen, in fact, we do. So, can we add a fee to an invoice?
Like if I'm going to assume a late fee is what the person is meaning here, and I'm going to tell you that I've seen it done a couple of ways. If it is common, we're just going to word it as if it is common, and you know exactly what I mean. If it is common and you want to track it, if you want to track that cancellation fee, or if you want to track that late fee, and it goes to a different general ledger code, and it is common, you could always create a program. In the interest of time, please mind the way that I'm going to show you this, because there's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can create a program that is always running. You know, put a end date that's 2050, completely making that up, but you get the idea behind it. I just want to make sure it's not a flex registration program before I click on it. This should not be a flex registration program to the person who's asking about the fee, by the way. Please don't make that. And then what you're going to do, register that person. I think that's a little ridiculous for for that type of a penalty, so we're going to do $13 as that penalty. I do need you to create the invoice, but instead of sending it to them, when you hit just take me back to the invoice, what I want you to do is merge it with the overdue invoice that has the late fee. Make sure this is all done in one tab, by the way. Merges cannot be done with duplicate tabs open. Please don't do that. The internet sends really weird signals, and it does. Sometimes it breaks and sometimes it doesn't. But I'd rather err on the side of caution, because when it breaks, I can't fix it. So keep in one tab. Some groups have done that because then what this program name is actually named is, late fee, cancellation fee. And it's added onto the invoice so that it makes sense when they're looking at that invoice. Now, some groups have taken to the fact that add-on fees and programs will appear on the invoice. So you could, if it's just programming that you do, make an add-on fee that would be for a late fee or cancellation and just list it on all your programs as an in-house fee so you can apply it. If it is not something that your staff has just for programs, then I do encourage a program each, especially if it's a common occurrence. It's going to be easier to track. You can always go into that program. You can register the same person multiple times. So I hate to word it this way. You can go and see who's the problem child that keeps ending up on that list, and have a conversation with them to maybe see if you can keep them off of it more often than not. But that's going to give you that line item separation. If it is a one-off, and I mean a one-off, I do not encourage this workflow for any reason outside of late fees or cancellation fees. And I need to be very clear, it does not trace. So that's why why I don't like this piece outside of very, very rare instances. This is that rare occurrence where you could do the create new invoice, find the person, call it how you'd like it, name if there's taxes, if there's a specific general ledger code, and then update the due date before creating the invoice and then merging it with their current one. You just lose the tracking in it. So it's really only useful if it's as I said, it's a one-off or it happens so rarely that like having a program is just going to make your life so much more complicated than it needs to. You can use the create invoice. But if it happens often, you should use the programming piece.
Thank you, Jen. Follow up to that question. Can you add the late fee to the fee scheduler and set a date when it goes into place?
I'm going to clarify this. Are you talking about like late registration fees? So like if registration was allowed until May 1st for $250, but if I signed up after May 2nd or after, it becomes $275?
Yes, that is what they are talking about.
Oh, perfect. That's how you go ahead and set that up. Just make sure you give yourself you can use the same fee name for this, but make sure that there is no gap in fees being available. That may sound like a strange thing to say out loud, but I have seen that. It was an accident, but I have seen that happen before. So make sure your end date and then the next fee start date just go smoothly into one another. And then you don't have to worry about that extra step because that's just automatically going to happen. I will state, though, I do have some groups, they do create a fee name that's for late registration just so that they can have a easier filter here on the roster because you can filter by fee name here.
Oh. All right, Jen, piggyback question on that one. Do you have a method that you would suggest for doing field trips or maybe like a late pickup for something like summer camp? Maybe that's in FlexReg?
It is in FlexReg. I actually have an example in FlexReg for, now this particular example in FlexReg, I'm going to be honest, I was using field trips because this particular example was just for field trips. If you're using Flex registration, and this is a very big distinction, when you are setting it up, the add-on fee schedule scheme once means they're going to get charged once for it. So for something like a field trip, it's going to overall set for the program. So if I'm charging them once $50 for the Mall of America trip, that's it. But if you have late pickup, before the before after care, and those are more add-on fees per day they sign up. And I know each of you groups do things so different, so I'm just going to be very clear that it is kind of unique to your needs. You can't do you can't do both because the system would, if for flex registration, it does allow you to do a add-on fee type for each day, but that would be best for that before and after care, because then every day they select if it's $50 for a regular day and then an extra $10 for aftercare, it automatically applies aftercare to all the days they select with the $10. So it's kind of right now it is an either or when you're using the Flex Reg. I will say that I have seen some cases with groups kind of creating two different fee structures within that registration where they are actually creating a schedule for aftercare or before care. I don't know what times you're going for, so I'm just sticking with aftercare. Where they've added the aftercare as second time slots. So they'd have 2 June 5th, one for 8 to 5, and then a second one from 5 to say 7. That way people can select that their kid is going to be there from that 5 to 7 times period as well, and pay an extra fee. We've kind of seen a whole bunch of different ways. It's really how your fee structure is going to break down.
Great. Thank you, Jen. We do have another question or two here on program fees. Do you want to get back to the regularly scheduled content, though, and do these at the end, or do you want to keep answering some of these financial questions now?
Do they line up with cleanup stuff, or are they more just interesting questions that people would like to know?
Interesting questions.
Okay. There's one more piece I just want to touch on, and this goes for new people as well as people who have been with us for a while. I personally feel that unless you have had absolutely no complaints whatsoever from your public about your flex forms, that once a year you totally need to pop back in there and see if there's a way that you could adjust them to do it better. And this isn't to be rude. This is because I understand how it feels when you're doing something like this. You want to make that paper form you had exactly the same in flex registration, but that might not necessarily be what you really need. You probably only need like a quarter of the information, but right now you're making it harder on the parents. You're making it look like the system's harder to use on their side. So what I always recommend is if you've had issues or if you've heard some complaints along the way, what I want you to do is in your forms, hit this submit response and actually do it. Actually submit the response to the form and see what it feels like to be a member of the public, especially for what your community goes through. And I'm only bringing this up because I've had cases where unique situations where I've had groups that their public is just having a really, really, really hard time filling out their flex forms. And I go and I look at it and I'm like, wow, there's just a bunch of check boxes. I don't understand why it's so hard. And then I have a bigger conversation. Oh, well, our population has a lot of seniors. And I don't mean to sound rude. I admit this myself as I've gotten older. Your vision does get a little bit worse as you get older. You're definitely making things bigger on the screen. And sometimes check boxes or little items like this can be hard. So after having a discussion with them, we just redid how they get that response. And it works perfect for them. There's no real difference for them, except for the fact that their public with that they know has issues because the buttons are small, does better with it being a drop down, or just does better with a one-off signature at the bottom of the form since they're all waiver pieces. There's all sorts of changes you can think about, but I just want you all to think about that because when we get these issues and they do come up, if you have not done this before, it will make those forms feel really different. And that was it for the form. So if we want to get into super cool questions that anyone has, we can.
Yeah, I definitely have some super cool questions for you, Jen. Number one here is for camps where maybe a couple of the campers are sponsorship, or I'm sorry, are sponsored. What is the best way to go ahead and keep track of the children that were sponsored? Is there like a members? Okay, go ahead.
Aha. This is one of my favorite topics to go over. And it's not so much cleanup work, but it is still one of my favorite things to mention to people because it is something that I feel you should track. And there's actually 2 ways that I recommend because really there's really two big ways that I've seen a lot of our organizations manage this. Now, you are either talking about a scholarship fund that's one of those, if we have families that income is below this amount, then we just won't charge them. I don't know if the city offsets you guys or how that particular piece works, but it's just one of those. I call it the free and reduced lunch kids because I was part of that group. Sometimes we hear that. So if we're talking about you guys just automatically give kids that receive free and reduced lunch, please mind that example, the ability to have a reduced camp cost or even a zero camp cost. And you're not needing to mark, outside funds that are just, city write-offs in RecDesk memberships. The big thing though, I recommend calling it something like financial aid or, I like the phrase scholarships, things like that. You do want to keep a positive name on it because nobody wants it to be called free and reduced lunch kids. That is just not something that people would be happy seeing listed as a membership. And I will state that I do have a large number of groups that they do this online membership wise, and they have a flex form for the household to complete. That way they're getting the information that you guys need when it comes to that financial aid, whether it's proof of the free or reduced lunch or maybe a SNAP benefit card or some type of evidence that they fall in that scale where they get assistance from you. Memberships is the way to go. I usually recommend it once a year because that's pretty much how most government programs function. But we have heard from other groups where you have a special scholarship. So I'm really going to call this special scholarship for the name. And this may sound a little bit ridiculous to everybody, but I promise this makes sense. I do have to add some details because this is my demo site and I did not shut off a bunch of features. And there's no real people. We've had many groups when they need to know which organization gave the scholarship. Now I'm calling this special scholarship right here, but I want to point out for all of these groups, click edit name up here on these profiles and change it to an organization, because then you can add something that's an easier search function so that if your staff forgets the scholarship, you guys use the word scholarship, or if they're looking for like a DCF type of fund, things like that, you can change the name right here. So I'm going to put RecDesk in there, which is our name. Say that this is from the organization, RecDesk Scholarship. Now, finance plays the biggest factor on the next step, and everyone may be laughing about this, but we all know that their permission is important. Some financial groups are okay with you create the profile. We're managing this credit because the RecDesk Scholarship Fund has $8,000 in it that you get to apply. And they're fine with this. They don't care how household credit shows on our reports. They know that it falls under an allocation fund for household credit. They're fine with it. Other finance departments are a little bit more picky. And I don't mean that in a rude or in a negative way. I think it's great. And they need it to show based on the general ledger code. They need you to show that you received the check. They want that information start to finish to show in RecDesk. If that's the case, some groups will create a point of sale item. And again, please bear with me on my names. And it'll just be something like, for scholarship funds. This way you can quickly come in, see how much the check was being written for that scholarship. Check out, it's check. You get to record the check number. You can even go all the way down to here and record it on that profile, making that payment. And then exit point of sale. Money and payment reconciliation will take you very quickly to just today's transactions. And this way, when you issue refund to the household credit account, your finance will see the in check and the out funds going into that profile. And I know that may sound strange, but I promise I have a video called Coach Credits that's over here under Resources and Helpful Workflows. Right here, that gets a little bit deeper into that. Coach Credits does too. That just kind of dives a little bit deeper into where finance may need to put their opinion on things because of how they'd like to see the reports. And then all you need to do is if that scholarship fund is going to be used to say pay Child's One's $568 summer camp, what we would just do is click on Edit, Find. My search does still have this person saved, but please know you would just need to search. So if I searched by scholarship, I could just type in the beginning, see it right here, and hit select and save. Now that they're the ones making the payment, I am able to allocate those special funds. Right, like that. And that's all you would need to do. And the benefit of this for the groups that are wondering why I made it so complicated, it's really because so many finance departments needed it to be a little bit more complicated. They needed a quick area to be able to go into the history to know all the payments that scholarship has made. And I'll have that record be nice and quick and easy. And this is the best way to make sure it's nice, quick, and easy.
Great. Thank you, Jenn. As of this time, we have no further questions. So we're going to be sticking around here for a few more minutes. If any questions pop up, whether it's on spring cleaning or maybe something else that we can go ahead and get to right now. But we want to thank everybody for joining us as we are through all of our new material. Hopefully you learned something and can use this opportunity to organize your rec desk a little bit.
Yes, and as a reminder to everybody who's still here with us, our support center is a great resource for a lot of questions you may have. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you can click on the submit support request. So if you forget our email, you can quickly come here or get our number. We also have our social media. I know Andrew brought this up in the beginning, but for those of you who do actually like following things on Instagram, we have been trying to post a bunch of tips and tricks there so that it makes it easier to get those little reminders out every once in a while, especially as topics start to come up. It's just a little quick way. And under our resources, we have training videos for your front desk users, so the people who don't build the programs, but the ones putting them in. And we have training videos for the ones who build the programs. So if you have new staff, please check this out. They can sign up for this as well as have the one-on-one, but this gives them an overview of the whole system so that then we can have a more focused training with them. We also have content management training videos available here as well for those of you with content management. And helpful workflows, we showed this earlier, they'll be able to reference back to, and our previous PowerUps, release notes, and another quick link to our support center.
All right, Jenn, we got a couple more questions in the chat. When using FlexReg, is there a way to get individual event rosters? And I believe that's going to be per day. Or like
yes.
per week. Yep.
Per week, per day. However you want to phrase this. When you go to the roster, I know a lot of you are so used to just doing this, but if you don't remember to filter by the day time slot, it's going to be everyone who's signed up. But I promise, if you filter it by just that particular day, it's only going to show that one participant or the participant for just that particular day or week, however you set that program up.
Great. Thank you, Jenn. And then here's a good question. Is there a way to delete a member so that if the member is And this example has passed away so that the rest of the household won't see it when they log in, won't see the member that has passed away when they log in.
That one breaks my heart because we
Hmm.
have had that question before, and they will see their archived household members when they log in. I have suggested in the past that it is kind to move them into our test user household. That does exist for all of our RecDesk customers because that's our fake user for when you guys call us with questions. That's how we pretend to be a community member and log in and do stuff to get the better information from there. So please feel free to move that person into that test user profile. We don't delete them. We won't get rid of them, but it'll still keep their information without it being super visible to the family. But please let us know what organization you are from so that we can also make sure you're on an enhancement request to be able to do that kinder in the future.
Great. Thank you, Jen. And then could you briefly review the duplicate member cleanup again?
So I'm going to just say out loud for the duplicate member cleanup again. If you have a large number of participants, meaning when you hit apply search, it'll have a number here next to entries. If that number is very, very large and you have a lot of duplicates, reach out to us. We'll send you an Excel file that you'll be able to run based on the number of people you have that'll help identify those duplicates easier. But if you don't think you have that many duplicates, or if you know that there's weird situations with duplicates because you have a Jennifer who created 3 profiles, but one's Jen, Jenny, and then Jennifer, you know, you may want to do some manual work as well. But this is one of those. I leave it up to you guys. If you have a large number, reach out to us. We can make it easier. If you have a smaller number, a lot of groups will just go page by page, and the way to know which member profile to log in or to merge. Give me one moment. I'm sorry, I got logged out. Lost internet for a moment there. The way you know which profile to merge is it's going to be the one that has the lower internal ID, most likely, because that's the older profile. It'll most likely have the out-of-date address or email or phone, or it's the one that does not does not have a login ID. So that's the one you want to merge. For the person that passed away, please move member into a different household.
Thank you, Jen. And then you do not have bulk email hooked up on there, do you?
No, I can still
Nope.
show you guys it. I just can't send anything.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. We have a question on using bulk email to send out promotional items.
Sure. Oh, what would they like to do?
Douglas, if you can hear me, are you talking about like a flyer being attached or just like a notification that, hey, we have a new program coming up?
So I'll just do a reminder that when you select recipients, you need to reach a large group, but you want to like filter it. Maybe you're just looking for people who have signed up for something going on in the summer. You can add this extra filter and say they need to be in a program that has scheduled dates between a certain period of time and only get that group. You can even filter it by just like a program name. So if the word camp is in all your camps and you need to reach all the camp people or all the baseball people, so on and so forth, you get the idea. You can add that extra filter. Just remember when you do the recipient list actions and you do the primary and alternate, this number becomes a smaller one if there are siblings or people of the same household.
Great. Thank you, Jen. And we got our last 2 questions here as we are nearing the end of our time. Is there a way you can resend a notification, maybe like an invoice notification?
To resend the invoice, go to the Money tab, and this is where all that extra work comes in handy. You can either email everybody. So if everyone's overdue or due, or you just need to get everybody's email out, check the box off next to the word number and it'll highlight everything. If it's only certain invoices you need to send out, check off the invoices you need to send out, and then actions and send selected invoices. This will allow you to bulk send those overdue invoices to customers. Just remember, you want to keep the token here, and this is the most important token right here. This is going to generate a link for them once the email is created.
Great. Thank you, Jenn. Next to last question here is there a way to go through the system and find all the duplicates? And I believe this is going to be for members. Is there an easy way of doing that?
Email us at support, and we'll be able to send you over the Excel file that does that. If the system doesn't do the cleanup internally, it is something you have to pull out and then clear through or manually go through page by page.
Great, thank you. All right, and the last question, Jenn, and this is a good one. How can they view this presentation in the future?
I try my best to get this recording up by 9 a.m. the next morning Eastern time. Just to clarify, I realize that this is the afternoon. I might have some Pacific people here. I usually try to get it up by 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do post it to our YouTube channel. We also post it right here in our resources. It'll probably be the first one right here, I think, after it gets uploaded. And we always have the same link within our support center. If you scroll down a little bit, we have an article for PowerUp with RecDesk, and this is just going to be a quick shortcut to our playlist for all the PowerUps we've done in the past.
Yes, that resources button is a great tool over there on the side. So please make sure you check that out. And as Jenn was saying, you will eventually see this PowerUp on there as well. And with that being said, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Hope you got something out of this. It was a very great topic. A lot of good information in here. So thank you, Jenn, for presenting on this.
Thank you, Andrew, for helping me today.
Of course. And for any other questions, please feel free to reach out to our support center or go ahead and you can also reach out to your customer success manager. And either one of those two options, we'll be happy to help you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.